Wikipedia is an endless bank of knowledge and expertise managed and updated by community members. Sure, that leads to the odd post with some less than accurate information, but those are usually quickly addressed. Being that Wikipedia covers just about anything, you can imagine it has its fair share of creepy articles. So join us as we delve into the dark side to find 10 of the creepiest pages on Wikipedia. Number 10. Joyce Vincent. When a person dies, in most cases they are discovered within hours or days, depending on where the person died, of course. Sometimes it even takes a week or two before the body is found. Joyce Vincent was a British woman who died around December 2003, and her remains were not discovered until January the 25th of 2006. That's over 2 years that nobody discovered Vincent's body. Before her death, she had cut off nearly everyone in her life, including friends and family. She quit her job in 2001 and moved into a shelter for victims of domestic abuse. In December 2003, she died of unknown causes. When discovered in 2006, her remains were described as mostly skeletal, and her body was far too decomposed to conduct a full post-mortem. Number 9. Taman Shud case. Also known as the mystery of the Somerton Man, Taman Shud is an unsolved case of an unidentified man found dead at 6:30 am, 1st of December 1948 on Somerton Beach in South Australia. The case is considered one of the biggest mysteries in Australia and has been subjected to intense speculation over the years with regards to the identity of the victim, the events leading up to his death, and of course death itself. In the pocket of the man's trousers, a piece of scrap paper with Taman Shud written on it was found. This means finished in Persian, and turned out to have been torn off a particular copy of a book, which was eventually handed in to the police 6 months after the body was found. The man's teeth did not match the dental records of any known living person. Number 8. Scaphism. Obviously there's no way to make torture seem appealing, since that would defeat the purpose. However, scaphism is a method that would make most other torture methods seem tame. An ancient Persian method of execution, scaphism is on another level of wrong. The victim would be stripped naked and firmly fastened within the interior space of 2 narrow rowing boats that were joined together with the head, hands and feet protruding. The condemned were forced to ingest milk and honey exclusively, which caused them to develop terrible cases of diarrhea. More honey would be poured onto them to attract insects, especially around the eyes, ears, mouth, face, genitals and anus. They would then be left to float on a stagnant pond or be exposed to the sun. Over time, the increased amount of feces and honey would attract hordes of insects that would eat and breed within the victim's flesh, and that would become increasingly gangrenous. Death, when it eventually came, would be due to dehydration, starvation and septic shock. Number 7. Premature burial. Naturally, burial is associated with the deceased. It's the process of putting the dead to their final resting place, sometimes for religious reasons and sometimes just to follow tradition. Being buried alive, I can only imagine, is a very different experience. Throughout history, animals and humans alike have been buried both accidentally and intentionally. It usually happens by accident when others incorrectly assume that the person is dead, when they could be sleeping or unconscious. But it can be done intentionally as a form of torture, murder or execution. How long the individual lives underground will vary on the conditions. A person trapped with fresh air to breathe, for example, can last a considerable time, plenty enough to drive someone mad. There's one account of accidental burial that dates back to the 14th century. Upon the reopening of his tomb, philosopher John Duns Scotus was reportedly found outside his coffin with his hands torn and bloody after attempting to escape. Number 6. June and Jennifer Gibbons. A truly eerie story. June and Jennifer Gibbons were identical twins who grew up in Wales. Growing up, they were inseparable, and their high-speed patois made it difficult for others to understand them. Being the only black children in their community, they were bullied in school, which proved to be quite traumatic for the children. Eventually, their language became even more personalized, and it was no longer possible for others to understand them at all, which led the twins to speak to nobody except each other and their younger sister Rose. When they turned 14, therapists tried to get them to communicate with others by sending them to separate boarding schools. But this caused the pair to become catatonic, meaning they became completely unresponsive. Once they were reunited, they would spend a few years isolating themselves in their bedroom, writing plays with dolls. But their writing careers didn't go anywhere, and they committed a number of crimes including arson, which led them to be committed to a mental health hospital where they remained for 14 years. Apparently, the girls had an agreement that if one died, the other must begin a normal life. During their stay at the hospital, they began to believe that one of them must die, and after much discussion, Jennifer agreed to be the sacrifice. Soon after, she died of a sudden inflammation of the heart. There was no evidence of drugs or poison in her system, and her death remains a mystery. A few days later, June said, "I'm free at last, liberated, and at last Jennifer has given up her life for me." By 2008, June was living quietly and independently near her parents in West Wales. She now seeks to put the past behind her. Number 5. Tarare. Tarare was a French showman and soldier, famous for his uncanny ability to consume endless amounts of food, always remaining hungry somehow. His parents were unable to feed him, so he was turned out of the family. He took his talents to Paris, where he swallowed corks, stones, live animals, and a whole basket full of apples. At the start of the War of the First Coalition, Tarare joined the French Revolutionary Army. Military rations were unable to satisfy his hunger, leading him to eat any available food from the gutters, but his condition worsened and he was hospitalized. Doctors ran a series of experiments on him, in which he ate a meal intended for 15 people, live cats, snakes, lizards, and puppies, and swallowed an eel whole without chewing. Despite his unusual diet, he was of normal size and appearance and showed no mental illnesses. He wanted to be cured, so he signed up for any treatment that could help him. Doctors attempted to treat him with laudanum, tobacco pills, wine vinegar, and soft-boiled eggs. The procedures failed, and doctors could not keep him on a controlled diet. He would sneak out of the hospital to scavenge in gutters, rubbish heaps, and outside butchers' shops, and attempted to drink the blood of other patients in the hospital and to eat the corpses in the hospital morgue. After falling under the suspicion of eating a toddler, he was ejected from the hospital. He reappeared 4 years later in Versailles, suffering from severe tuberculosis, and died shortly afterwards, following a lengthy bout of exudative diarrhea. Number 4. Rat King. Upon hearing the term Rat King, you may think of a royal rodent, a furry friend with a crown to match. Well, it's not that, not even slightly. A rat king involves a number of rats intertwined at their tails, which can become stuck together with blood, feces, dirt, hair, or simply become knotted. The animals grow together while joined at the tails and turn into a truly disgusting monstrosity. The number of rats that become joined together vary, but rat kings formed in large numbers are rarer. Historically, various superstitions surrounded rat kings, and they were often seen as a bad omen, particularly associated with plagues. Number 3. Coffin birth. If you're eating, stop. If you're thinking about eating, either stop here or stop thinking about eating. Right. So, coffin birth can happen if two criteria are met. There needs to be a dead woman in a coffin, and she needs to have been pregnant at the time of her death. In such a case, it's possible that the dead fetus is pushed through the vaginal opening of the decomposing body of the pregnant woman as a result of the increasing pressure of intra-abdominal gases. Typically during the decomposition of a human body, naturally occurring bacteria in the organs of the abdominal cavity, such as the stomach and intestines, generate gases as byproducts of metabolism, which causes the body to swell. In some cases, the confined pressure of the gases can squeeze the uterus, even forcing it downward, and it may turn inside out and be forced out of the body through the vaginal opening. If a fetus is contained within the uterus, it could therefore be expelled from the mother's body through the vaginal opening when the uterus turns inside out, in a process that, to outward appearances, mimics childbirth. I need to take a shower now. Number 2. Euthanasia coaster. In 2010, a PhD candidate at the Royal College of Art in London decided to design a roller coaster designed for the sole purpose of ending people's lives. He described the purpose of the roller coaster was to take lives with elegance and euphoria. The concept design starts with a steep lift to the 510-meter top, which would take 2 minutes for the 24 passengers to reach. Once there, a 500-meter drop would take the train to 360 km per hour before flattening out and speeding into the first of its 7 inversions. Each would be smaller than the one before in order to maintain the lethal 10G to passengers. After a sharp right-hand turn, the train would enter a straight where the unloading of corpses and loading of new passengers could take place. To be fair, it's probably a better way to go than scaphism or being buried alive. Number 1. Locked-in syndrome. Locked-in syndrome is a condition in which a person is aware but they can't move at all or communicate verbally because nearly all muscles in the body except for the eyes become paralyzed. Total locked-in syndrome is a version where the eyes are also paralyzed. Other than being unable to speak or move, those with locked-in syndrome usually have no mental issues. Patients are conscious and aware, and usually live out the rest of their lives with blinking being their only form of communication. There is no standard treatment or cure, and the majority of locked-in syndrome patients never regain motor controls.